Ryan Ham here. And have you ever had one of those days? Well, I buy used shotguns, and I prefer to buy shotguns that have issues, and I do minor gunsmithing on them, do a few repairs, and then I sell them. Well, this happens to be a high standard pointer, and when I saw it, I saw that it had a problem, and I was informed that it had a problem. It wasn't ejecting correctly. And usually when it doesn't eject, in my experience, it's the ejector. In this case, High Standard has a funny thing called an exjector. It's a combination of an extractor and an ejector. Now here's the primary extractor, and here is what should be the secondary extractor slash ejector. And when it reaches the end of its travel, it's supposed to poke the case out. But it's not supposed to look like that. And knowing that, I thought, hey, here's a little room to buy a gun that somebody doesn't want, and to turn it into something that somebody does want. I live in America, and let the buyer beware, because I bought the shotgun and it had more than one problem. I knew what this problem was, so I had a exjector, which you see it goes all the way along here. It's held in by a pin. It's under spring pressure to go back and forth that way, and this is what it's supposed to look like sticking out there. Of course it doesn't, so this is the correct part. I'm going to replace that, but I also found some other issues, and let me go over two of those issues, one of which I've already corrected. It was a simple issue, but an issue nonetheless. Here's my repair part. This is the primary issue, and I would have known that had I function checked the gun a little bit better, but I don't normally function check by dry firing. So, and that's mainly a reason of, if you're at a gun show and you see a gun and you try to dry fire it, and and it doesn't help that people don't like their guns to be dry fired. So I prefer to buy the gun, and if it's got a problem with the trigger, I'll bite it, but I haven't had to do it until now, and I'll show you the reason. Because this is not the same exact part. This is a part that I ordered. It might be from a J.C. Higgins, but this is a part that was originally there. And if you look up inside, you will see that one of these things is not like the other. That one is clearly broken down inside of there. Not to mention that, but I don't much care for the gold-plated stuff. The gold plating is mostly worn off here. So what I ended up doing is I ended up buying this trigger, and it had a non-gold plated safety with it, so I'm going to swap those out. And I've never dug into a J.C. Higgins trigger group because I don't think I ever had to. They're pretty stout normally. I just I have a reason to now. This is broken. Now I don't know how it got broken, but I do intend to fix it. Now, seeing as how it's a different design, I worry that it's different enough that I might have to do some fitting. It's got a spring down here, and this one's got a hump. I don't really know. This might not work. I've got a backup plan if that doesn't work, but we'll do this together. And the other problem that I had with this shotgun is I would call him an idiot, but it's a tool, and you can do whatever you want with your tool. Somebody had taken this, which says 30 watt something or other. I don't know if it's a fuse or what, but it's basically a hollow, empty cup made out of aluminum, and they had jammed a good half of this spring down inside of it, and I think the intent was to make it the same length as the magazine tube, and to make it easier to load. That's the only thing I could think of, because there was very little pressure on the follower here. So that's what I guess. I don't know. But that was an easy fix. I just basically, it has these little wings that kind of held the spring down in there. It's kind of an ingenious fix if you don't really know how shotguns work, and it probably made it less reliable. So I don't doubt that's the reason why I got this gun, but they're all simple fixes, fairly inexpensive, and in the end I'll have a shotgun that I think will be fully functional and better. And I might actually keep this one. Very dirty, as you would imagine with a 50-year-old shotgun that probably hasn't seen too much in the way of maintenance. But good wood, good solid wood, no splits that I could see. A little one there, but that's where they commonly split up there. And the stock is solid, and the receiver has no pitting to speak of, just a few spots of some heavy rust that I would consider, and a few areas of rust also that I'll hit with my penny method of cleaning. And if you don't know what that is, what I'll do is right up here in the corner I'll link that, the video of that. So the rib is in good condition, unlike some of the other the J.C. Higgins shotguns that I showed you earlier that had the exact same rib on it. And the only other problem is, and I knew this when I bought the gun, the only other problem is there's a little ding on the muzzle there. And I think I'll just clean that up a little bit because that won't affect function. I might just re-crown the muzzle. I might clean it up. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to chop this shotgun down because I think it'll work just fine as it is. Alright, I will pause the video, I will do some work, and I will get back with you. Okay, I wanted to give you a little insight into how this works. Essentially, I cleaned up the new part a little bit here, and you can see how dirty the old part is, but I doubt it was ever out of there. It just kind of broke. So there's the broken end. Anyhow, this slot here that goes lengthwise corresponds to this spring here. So that spring goes inside of that slot, and then this pin goes down in front of said spring. Believe it or not. And that is what gives it its spring tension in there. It's a very odd system, I guess, but that's the way it works. It's going to be a pain in the butt to get back and get it back in there. Anyways, that the raceway here is where the extractor slides, and I haven't cleaned that up completely, I guess. Extractor, ejector, so it'll slide basically in there, and it should sit flush most of the time, and then kind of shove it out right at the end there. So I cleaned up the bolt a little bit, not too bad. There's also this pin here that's protruding just a little bit, and I'm going to tap that in. Just as a note, there's splines on this pin. If you ever have to do the work yourself, the splines, you have to drive the pin out from the bottom because the splines were in the top. There you go. I'll be back in a few minutes. So that didn't seem like much trouble at all. And here you go, it's back together. What I had to do is I had to push that until it protruded just slightly into the channel there. And you can see the spring in there, and what it did is it caught the beginning of the spring. And I stuffed a punch in from the bottom here to catch the bottom half of the spring. And I pushed it in just a little bit to make sure it was all free and I wasn't kinking it or anything like that. And then I tapped it in from the top. It helps if you have three hands, but I don't. So I had to hold, yeah, I had to improvise. So old to new. The reason I did this one is it was the easier repair, and I might be working on the trigger for a while, and I wanted to get this one done before I get aggravated with that. So dummy round here, A-zoom dummy round. So what happens is the shell is extracted like this, and then when it gets to the end of its travel, this here strikes a surface and it ejects the round, and that's a little bit quicker. You can see how this little nub gets is sitting out in the open, and it's exposed, and it could very easily break off, and I have proof that it's done it at least once. Okay, I forgot to knock that pin back in, but when I get back I'll show you what I've done with the trigger guard, and hopefully I can or with the trigger group, and hopefully I can get that done for you. Be back in a minute. Okay, I ran into a little bit of a hitch here, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to show you what I am doing. There's a disconnector here, that basically a secondary sear. Here's the broken trigger, by the way, so you could see it broke. And the reason it broke is because there's a little slot cut out there for this disconnector to go in there, and it's spring loaded. And what that does is that catches the hammer while you've got the trigger pulled back. And when you release the trigger, it the secondary sear here disappears, and the primary sear on the front of the trigger, which is this surface here, engages the hammer. Well, without the secondary sear, what happens is the gun can slam fire, which is just fine. And on the J.C. Higgins model, which this trigger I guess is from, I had to do a little research to figure it out first. On the J.C. Higgins model, it's not only just fine, but that's kind of the, that's factory. Since I'm replacing with the J.C. Higgins trigger, I am going to eliminate the secondary sear, the plunger, and the spring here as unnecessary, and the gun will function just a little bit different from the way it used to. In other words, it'll function just like the J.C. Higgins model, which is less expensive. So just to show you here, looking down from the top, you could see there's no secondary sear, which would be in this area kind of, and that would catch the nose of the hammer right there, I guess. Let's see. Well, it'll catch something, but essentially it's unnecessary. I'm going to function check this after I'm done. Here's another. This is off of a J.C. Higgins Model 20, which is the same in most aspects. In fact, the trigger is similar, but a little bit cheaper because this one has a set screw right there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my job. I just wanted to show you that little idiosyncrasy there. And here's the complete stripped trigger guard with one exception. And I also wanted to show you that in order to get the safety out, see that little hole there? That little hole, you stick the end of a paper clip in there, and you push up on that, and there's a ball detent that goes up into the housing here. You push up on that, and then you push it through that way, which on the gun would be like you're putting the safety or taking the safety off. See, right now that ball detent moves down inside of there. That little slot down in there, that gold piece, it moves that slot out of the way so that the hammer will hit, this little nub on the hammer will hit that area, and when it moves out of the way like that, the trigger can go down. So there we go. I'm going to clean everything up, put it back together, and I'll be back in a minute. Just wanted to show you the trigger group that's been all cleaned out. Detail clean. There's still a few bits of gunk down inside of there and down inside of this little spring hole. And there's the safety remove. You see the where the hole where the detent would go and will go. And it is awful clean. I'm going to oil it up and put it all back together and see if it works. Be back in a minute. Okay, that took me a little longer than I expected. I kind of figured out what the problem was and why the trigger broke. And let me demonstrate that to you. You see, I've got the non-gold plated parts in here. So what you see here is there's a little paddle, and if you look closely inside, there's that little nub that moves forward in the way of the trigger. So now it's barely out of the way, and you can see as I pull the trigger, that trigger kind of clears that little nub. And of course, when the hammer falls, that little lever goes back in the way of the trigger. So the hammer falls, let go of the trigger, and that little nub goes back up in there. Well, the problem was that little nub actually impinges on the slide release. So you can see that that leverages that back, and of course it releases the slide up here. Well, that part had probably been replaced, or the slide release had been replaced, one of the two, but either way, that little that little nub in there wasn't being allowed to move back like it is now out of the way. So what I did is I altered the cheapest part, which in this case was this paddle that I could alter. I could have altered this also and kind of carved a little trench. Do you see where it's touching? It's a shiny piece up top. You see where it's touching there? It's touching the slide release. So I altered that surface and got it. I do have the luxury today of having another gun here so that I could compare the geometry, and so that worked out pretty well. So everything is fixed. The reason for the trigger not working and the reason for the trigger breaking has been found, and that's clearly that little surface there. I'm glad I got it. I was able to fix it. So let's do a function check. So safety off, pull the trigger, and the hammer falls. Try that again. Hammer falls. Let's put the safety on and pull the trigger, and nothing will happen. And we're done. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put the gun together, and yeah, I may not get to a range session, but I was essentially solving, well, now 4 problems: the clearance problem and the fit problem with this little paddle here, the trigger being broken because that little paddle was there, the ugly safety parts that I replaced with good-looking safety parts, cleaned up the assembly, and now I'm ready to clean up the rest of the gun, put it back together, and I'll do a function check on that with my dummy rounds, and we should be good to go. So I've got it back together now. No issues, and I will demonstrate that everything works here. Okay, it works good. I already tried it with a couple of rounds here off camera because it's difficult to do left-handed. So if you see down inside of, yeah, maybe you can see it. See that little ejector? There we go. See how it stops? There we go. Move it back just a little bit. There you go. And it stops and pushes in and out and ejects. So now it's working. Everything else is working. Put the safety on. See that it doesn't fire. Take the safety off. Fire. And what it did is didn't necessarily slam fire. The hammer just followed the bolt home. And we're set. Everything is hunky-dory. Cleaned it up a little bit. Took some of the rust off. Cleaned up the dent, the ding on the muzzle. It was a little sharp. What you want to do is you want to take away all the sharp edges so there's no place for a crack to start. The vent rib looks good. Probably a little more cleaning up to do, but all in all, decent shotgun. I'm pretty impressed with the overall quality and workmanship on such a bargain gun from the past. I believe it holds 5 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the tube. Of course, you'll want to put a plug in there if you're using it for hunting, or if you never intend to use it for that many shots. It wouldn't help to have a plug in there just in case somebody down the road decides to go hunting. You don't want them to get in trouble. Most sports shooting, you don't need more than 2 or 3 shots anyways. Alright. This is Ryan Ham. If you like this video, please click on the like button. If you want to reference it for the future, please click on favorite. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please click subscribe. If you want your friends to see it, please click share. If you have any questions, please comment down in the comment section. and I will see you later. Bye.